Welcome. I hope you are having a wonderful night, dear viewer. Tonight, I will be telling some terrifyingly scary stories. Make sure to leave your feedback on the comments so I can make this the best experience for you. And if you have any stories you would like me to tell, you can send them through the link in the description. Let's begin. Story 1. This is probably the creepiest, most unexplainable thing that has ever happened to me. I used to work overnight as a security guard at the local port. Usually, none of the port workers would stay overnight except for the safety official. I wouldn't be on the shift alone, since the site has a radius of nearly 2 miles. Overnight, usually there would be 3 guards, including me. Since the area was fairly big, there were different posts, but the front gate was the main entrance area, where all of the guards would be stationed overnight since there was no need to put them in other posts, due to the fact that there was no activity in the site at this time. The veteran guards that have been there for years would often say that the site was haunted, given the fact that there have been accidents and deaths that occurred in the area a long time ago. I was aware that people died there due to freak accidents, and I do believe in angels and demons, since I'm actually a religious person, but I always thought that the superiors were just messing with the new guys. I would work 5 to 6 nights out of the week, and for the first few weeks, I never really saw or heard anything out of the ordinary, except for maybe a few questionable creaks and would see a few misplaced objects while doing my patrol rounds. But nothing too crazy. Just to describe the setting to you, this is a fairly big site, and on occasions when there were big projects being constructed at the port, the workers would sometimes stay overnight, due to the fact that there were times where port workers were required to stay at the port for a few days. There's a gym on the site for their convenience. This gym is fairly old. In the gym, there's a sauna, weights, and even a racquetball court. If you don't know what a racquetball court is, it's similar to an indoor tennis court with thin plastered walls and thick glass doors. Usually, on our patrol rounds, me and one of the other guards, Mike, would stop by the gym and play a few rounds of racquetball before returning back to the front gate. On one of those nights, me and Mike decided to hit a full workout instead of playing racquetball in the cage. This is around 2:30 a.m. and the entire building is so quiet that you can hear the electricity running through the lights. The air conditioner is off, and so is everything else. The only thing that's running are the lights. 15 to 20 minutes into the workout, we hear a loud thump. We crossed it off as nothing and continued working out. Then, after a few more minutes, we heard the loud thump once more. At first, we thought it was our lieutenant, who could have been walking around. But then we radioed him, and he gave us his location, which was at the front gate. We tried thinking logically on what could be making those thumps on the wall. They were coming from the court on the other side. We thought it was the air conditioner, but then we remembered that it was off. And even when it switched on during the day, there are no reports of thumps coming from the air conditioner. After a few more minutes, the thumps started occurring one right after another. We were very creeped out at this point, but what we were about to witness still scares the absolute shit out of me to this day. We started to approach the other side of the gym where the glass door was. We turned on the flashlight and aimed it towards the clear glass door, and I got chills all over my body, and I started tearing so much out of fear that I was about to cry. We saw one of the balls rolling slowly by itself inside the court, but there was no one in there. So that means the loud thumps were the balls mysteriously being tossed against the wall, as if something was playing inside the cage. We were both so confused and frightened as to how this was really happening. We couldn't make sense of any of it. We were scared shitless, and we started yelling and running away because we knew that there was probably something evil toying with us right there. As we sprinted full speed back to the front gate, the lieutenant saw us and asked why we were tearing and running in a ridiculous manner. We told him what we witnessed, and his facial expression scared us even more. He then said, "That's why there are always guards that quit often. There's something evil in the area, and it's not the first time that something that bad has happened here." He then showed us security footage of dark figures and shadows, literally passing through the office areas and lights, mysteriously switching on and off. To this day, I still get chills recounting my experience with my friends and family. And I'm even getting chills right now as I'm typing this. I had never had a real encounter with the supernatural until that night. Many say that it was a demonic presence messing around. Others say it was the ghost of a dead person who died in the area. I don't know what it was, but I didn't last long in the job after that. There were other experiences, but I'll send it at a later time. Story 2. This happened about 13 years ago when I was a sophomore in college, attending a liberal arts school in Suffolk County, New York. Within the first month or two of freshman year, I had found myself in a very tight-knit group of fellow theater geeks, 6 guys, myself included, and 1 girl, and they all loved horror movies and ghost stories. I had found my crew. Freshman year was tough, but we all held each other up and made the whole experience more enjoyable for one another. At the beginning of sophomore year, we decided that in October, as the Halloween season was ramping up, we would find a creepy wooded spot in a nearby town some night and scare the crap out of ourselves. We did some research and found that there was a particularly isolated area about 30 minutes away, infamous for paranormal sightings. Perfect. The 7 of us split into 2 different cars and headed out into the night. Allow me to set the scene. You turn off a busy main road, flooded with strip malls and restaurants and whatnot, and you are almost immediately greeted by complete darkness. Again, this area was very heavily wooded. It was essentially a large web of winding roads, surrounded by trees, very few streetlights, and very few houses. Without a GPS or a good sense of direction, one could easily get lost in there. We all made sure to have fully charged phones and flashlights, just in case. But the goal was to keep driving until we collectively decided to pull over and go exploring. So, per the directions, we made a left off of the main road, driving for 30 minutes or so into this dark network, picking directions at random, just getting intentionally lost. Our cars made a turn, and to our surprise, there was a huge log in front of us. We had reached a dead end of some kind, with nothing but trees beyond it. We all got out to see what exactly this was, stepped over the log, and noticed 2 narrow trails leading in different directions. This seemed like as good a time as any to grab our flashlights and do some amateur ghost hunting. We flipped a coin and set off on the trail to the right. The trail was so narrow that we had to walk single file to avoid getting whacked by branches. For whatever reason, I ended up in the back. I'm usually pretty rational and level-headed, but I have to say, the further we went in, the more I was overcome with an uneasy feeling. I kept hearing sounds deep in the woods, unable to shake the feeling we were being watched, but I seemed to be the only one who heard these things, so I shrugged it off as my imagination. And in any case, the whole point of us being there was to get scared. Not to mention the fact that we were 7 able-bodied college students. What would we come across that could take us down? We headed down this trail for about 20 minutes, and just when I thought it would never end, we came to a massive clearing. And I mean massive. It was a large, open field of unkempt grass, comparable in scope to a golf course, but not nearly as well. Manicured. Trees surrounded the entire field, which was so large we could not see the end of it from where we were standing. I was thrilled to get out of that narrow trail, but I don't think any of us were expecting to find an area so vast. One of us looked to the right and said, "Hey, check that out." We all turned, and there was an old, dilapidated house several hundred yards away. The house was completely dark, with no cars or signs of anyone actually living there. We walked over and shined our flashlights at it. And sure enough, the windows and doors were all boarded up. I managed to peer between the boards on one of the windows, and what I could see was an old white couch, covered in plastic, but an otherwise empty room. Whoever used to live here, they were long gone. Because there was no way in, and because we all felt sufficiently creeped out by the house anyway, we decided to walk closer to the trail we had come in from, have a seat in the field, and figure out where to go next. We walked towards the narrow trail, but before we could sit, my friend Mark stopped what he was doing. His expression dropped, and he pointed. We all turned, and on a very far side of the field, directly across from where we had come in, we could see someone tall, lanky, and pale dancing among the trees. And by dancing, I mean it was skipping around it, grabbing a tree, swinging around it, and then doing the same to another tree. Basically, a do-see-do. The moon was so bright and the woods so dark it actually took a second for us to really understand what we were looking at. Jay, the 6'4" skeptic of the group, wasn't seeing it. I leaned into him, pointed in that direction, and said, "Jay, look where I'm pointing." "Don't you see that?" He squinted a bit. And the second that he saw it, he gasped with everything he had, clutched my arm, and whispered, "What the fuck is that?" What happened next sent shockwaves through all of us. Whoever this was, they stopped dancing, looked in our direction, and started charging straight at us. Without even thinking, we freaked and ran back to the trail. Yet again. Jay was the only one who didn't see what was happening. He shouted after us, "Guys, what is it? Where are you going?" After about 15 seconds of running like hell, I heard Jay scream, "Holy shit." I looked back and saw his flashlight following the rest of us into the trail. While the walk into the woods took about 20 minutes, we made it back to our 2 cars, hopped in, and were peeling away in closer to 5. Once we were a safe distance away, we pulled over, got out, and checked in with each other about what just happened. My heart was pounding, and I know everyone else was feeling the same way. Nearly 15 years later, we are all still friends, living in different states yet keeping in touch through marriages, divorces, children, etc. But occasionally, out of the blue, one of us will send a group text to the others with something to the effect of, "The woods." That really happened, right? It most certainly did. That experience is always in the back of my mind, and I'm pretty sure it always will be. Here's the thing that still resonates with me about that night. Whoever that was, they were dancing maniacally in the woods at 1 in the morning, and then ran directly for a group of young adults, not at all fazed by the fact that they were severely outnumbered. Did he know we were there from the second we parked? Was he the sound that I kept hearing when we walked the trail? Whatever the case may be, when he came for us that night, you can be sure none of us wanted to stick around and see what he was truly capable of. Story 3. I had a summer job when I was a 15-year-old girl that was a few miles from my house. I lived in a rural wooded area, and my parents never let me go into the woods by myself. But they worked days and my job started at noon every day, so I had to walk to work. I chose to disobey them and walk through the woods, instead of on the road, to work because it cut about a mile off of my walk. So every day, at the same time, I'd walk through the very much abandoned state forest down a deer path for a mile or so, until it intercepted a railroad track. Then I'd walk a couple more miles down the railroad tracks into town to my job. Stupid, I know, but I was 15. Taking this path always freaked me out, and I always felt like I was being watched. But it was shorter, and less sunny, and less hot, and so I ignored my instincts, thinking my parents' influence was just making me paranoid. My parents would pick me up after my shift, unaware of my daily routine. This continued for weeks. One day, I'm walking, about a mile from any houses, deep in the woods, and there are 2 porn magazine pages that have been ripped out and placed on the trail facing me. They hadn't been there the day before. I was completely creeped out as they were clearly intentionally placed, and probably for me, since very few people utilized this area. But I kept walking because if I turned around at this point, I'd have further to go to get out of the woods, and then there was a huge hill to climb to get back to my house, and no one would be around there to help me anyway. This was a densely wooded area with brambles and dogwood and rolling hills, so I couldn't see very far in any direction. Suddenly, I could hear someone else walking close by. I stopped, and I would hear them for a split second, and then they would stop. They sounded like they had change in their pocket, so I knew it wasn't an animal, but because of the echo, I couldn't tell where it was coming from. Just to check that I wasn't crazy, I stopped once more and heard the same noise, which quickly stopped when I stopped. That's when I knew I was being stalked. My heart was racing with fear, and my vision went blurry. But my instincts told me not to speak, and not to run, but just keep walking down the dense deer path further into the woods. My gut told me not to look behind me. I could sense there was someone right behind me on the deer path now, but I did not look back. Now, I'm a rather short, slightly chubby person. Always have been. And looking at me, you'd probably assume that I couldn't run very fast, so if you wanted to catch me deep in the woods, you might assume you had plenty of time to do so. And looking back, I think that is exactly what this creep was thinking. But back then, I ran cross-country and track, and could run a 7-minute mile, and hills were my specialty. I always placed really well on hilly terrain. By no means was I a great runner, but certainly, I was likely faster than whatever creep was hanging out in the woods, stalking a little girl. It's not that I was processing this thought. At the time, I just instinctually knew not to run. I kept walking, seemingly deeper into the woods, because I knew the train track was up ahead, where there would be more space to run without tripping or getting caught in the tree branches. It was terrifying to not look back, but something told me not to. While I walked, I felt like my entire body was shutting down. It's a feeling I've never felt before, or after that day. It was the feeling of being prey. Everything went blurry, and I could feel blood pulsing in my ears, and my heart was pounding. I just kept walking, like nothing was happening, and did not turn around. But I could feel someone, maybe 5 or 10 feet behind me at this point, following me for a good 1/8 of a mile. I didn't turn around. I didn't scream because I knew no one would hear me. As soon as I got nearer the train tracks, which were elevated along a man-made gravel mound, I ran. And then I ran on all fours up the hill, gripping onto weeds to pull myself up faster. And then I sprinted along the tracks as fast as my lungs and legs could carry me. I heard and saw branches snapping below me in the woods. But now I was out in the sun, and the woods were dark, so I couldn't see what was behind the branches. I just kept sprinting. I never even saw the person, but I knew their intentions were awful. I never cut through the woods again, and I didn't mention what happened to my parents until I was 18 and had moved out of the house. I was too afraid of being grounded